Okay. Maybe as the rest of you, or maybe not, I'm just like still amazed by the fact that it has almost been 3 years since the release of ChatGPT back in November 2022, which was fast followed by the Copilot announcement around March 2023. So at this space, it's not really surprising to see many of the reports that we've been seeing around the fact that many of the organizations have been adapting or in the middle of just like planning to adapt certain aspects of AI in their day-to-day job or mainly productivity-wise in integrating many of those tools into their existing systems. However, when you look back at the percentage of those organizations who have really had a proper or established a comprehensive AI governance strategy, those are around 30%. So this gap raises a serious governance and security concern, and of course, making it a potential risk. And then ideally, you can think of this as potentially ticking bomb if you don't do anything about it in your own organization and in your enterprise. So how should you address this challenge? And this is practically why we're here today, is to tell you about some of the frameworks and kind of thought process that you can use or consider in your organization to establish that kind of governance body in your organization.
Before you move on, Hasim, just quickly, could you just kind of go over the governance or like define it for anyone who might be beginners? Because we do have some beginners. This session is open to all. So if you could just kind of go over governance and what it is just at a high level for people.
Yeah, I don't think that there is a kind of a one unique universal definition, but governance, you can think of it as a kind of the overarching umbrella that have the rules, policies, processes, and we'll talk about that as well as like the pillars for governance in a minute. And of course, people, that is part of that. And again, we'll touch on that in a second. That really are around your organization to manage and control certain aspects. So in our case, we're talking specifically about Copilot Studio agents, but this is mainly a reflection of that body of process, rules, security, people, and of course the kind of tools that you're going to be leveraging and using for that.
And Hazem, if I can just add to that,
Sure.
right? Like think of governance as, for Copilot Studio at least specifically, think of it as your ability to control who can build what. How can you manage access to what has been built? How do you control access to the data in your organization, and setting up those policies to ensure that you are secure, you're compliant, while not blocking the pace of innovation that we see in the world today. Yep. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so let's begin by considering a hypothetical scenario to guide you through the governance journey through the eyes of someone who's now been responsible or been assigned as being the responsible person in their organization to kind of oversee the governance of Copilot Studio agents. So consider the following. You just arrived at your work next day. Congratulations, you have been actually promoted and been appointed as the Chief Copilot Studio Officer. Maybe you're wondering, like, what does that role entail? So in that role, you're mainly tasked with developing a comprehensive strategy or a governance strategy to ensure compliance, security of Copilot Studio agents across your organization. But also you have to be making sure that you're facilitating the expansion and adoption of Copilot Studio. So because we all know, just like probably the kind of easy brutal force approach is just like switch off everything, but that's not necessarily going to lead to the adoption and innovation that you're looking for as part of leveraging that tool in your organization. So how can you strike that balance, and what are the essential considerations, framework, tools, steps that you should really try to leverage to design and execute in that strategy? And not only that, but you also need to consider the different scaling scenarios to effectively manage probably thousands of agents, because when we talk about like personal productivity and the fact that you can just like anyone individual spin their own agent for their own automation, so this is how your organization end up with thousands of agents using by few people or few users. But on the other side of the spectrum, think about like a few production critical agents that are really used by thousands of your users. That could be either an internal employee agent, for instance, Copilot agent that serves all of your employees, or could be even an external agent that serves your end customers, whether this is a customer support or some sort of automation for order management and so on. So the question is how to deal with the two spectrum of scales efficiently as well in your organization. Also, the thing to keep in mind that many of the innovation and technology enthusiasts like ourselves tend to focus first on tools, which what Raul will cover today, and will take you through the rest of the session to show you some of those useful tools. I think going back to one of the polling points that are like, I would like to see the features and tools, so we'll get into that in a second. However, it's important to consider governance from a broader perspective, so taking a step back. And the three primary governance pillars or lenses that you can think through to help you to establish and achieve that balance between security, governance, and innovation are people, process, and tools. And in the interest of time, we will not be diving in deeper into each of them, but we will just give you a glimpse of each of those pillars and how they look like in practice to some extent. But let us know if this is something of interest. We can definitely have a dedicated session to go over that. And before we do that, it's also important to recognize that each organization, they have their own unique requirement and they have their own unique structure. So it's not like a one size fits all. There's kind of the baseline or template, and then you need to customize that to your organization based on your existing structure and model. An example of that, one organization or a enterprise could have a centralized governance. Like this is great because ideally you can provide kind of a uniform control and decision making across all the organization. On the other side, it might create a bottleneck. So we have to figure out, based on your existing model, how can you tailor some of the different aspects when it comes to people, processes, and tools to match the existing model in your organization. So let's revisit the Chief Copilot Officer responsibility that you have been assigned, and think through the 3-step streamlined approach that you can use to build your governance and strategy. So again, through the same lens of people, process, and tools. What should you be doing, and how should you be looking at that on kind of day one on the job for that in particular? And this is not meant to be an exhaustive list of everything that you need to do, but think of it as more as a reference template for you to think through this. And going back to the customization, you can take this back, try to overlay it with your organization requirement, and then come up with your own version of that. So step one, once you step into your new role, it's important to establish a baseline of all agents, Copilot Studio agents in your organization and tenant, to avoid scenarios like the shadow IT. You need to really find out how many agents do you have, who's using those agents, where do they set, who are managing them, who's using them. And also, when it comes to a process, you also need to take into consideration what are the requirements for my organization. For instance, certain enterprises and industries like banking, finance might have certain compliance requirements that are more rigid compared to, let's say, manufacturing. So you have to take that into consideration and look closely into just understanding the lay of the land in terms of compliance requirements, in terms of policies, in terms of existing agents. And then there are today a number of tools, and Raul will cover some of that as well. We'll just like give you a glimpse of that that you can leverage inside Power Platform Admin Center and M365's Admin Center as well to go and get that list of inventory of agents and see where they are sitting. Center of Excellence Starter Kit as well is another tool that you can leverage to achieve that goal. So now, once you have established that kind of baseline, and now you understand the kind of baseline of inventory of agents in your organization, now you have to start thinking about like designing your own framework and governance process to meet your organization requirement. And this is mainly entailing a number of things. Again, stakeholders, people, this is very important going back into the kind of centralized versus federated model. Are you going to be having a centralized model where there is only a single team that is managing the process end to end? Then how does that look like? Is there an intake process where people go and say, hey, I would like to have access to an environment? Or is there an automated process? And again, Raul will touch on that. We'll show you some aspects of that in the demo. Or there is some kind of centralized decision policies that you can build, and then some delegated policies that different business units can own. And you have kind of dedicated center of excellence people managing those at the business unit. So all of those aspects you have to think about. One additional aspect is like, what's your environment strategy? And are you ideally planning to have dev, QA, prod environments? And how do your makers get onto the dev environment on day one? Again, we'll touch briefly on that to show you that in practice and how it looks like. And there are tools that can help you to achieve that today. Things like managed environment groups, policies, purview, all of those tools are available today to actually help you achieve that goal. So once you established your governance policy, configured that, you did your environment strategy, and having implemented all the primary components of governance, it's essential to systematically monitor all the governance indicators. Ideally, during the planning phase, you would have already figured out the aspects of the KPIs that you would like to measure, the telemetry, and all the indicators that you would like to monitor. And then ideally, you start monitoring those and then get into that kind of loop where you would like to improve and then ideally automate all of those aspects. Again, there are a number of tools today that would allow you to do that. We will just briefly cover some of them as we go through the next section. This is mainly meant to reflect a kind of an overview about like tools. Again, I don't think that we're going to be covering all of those today. We're just like probably touching on a very few of them. But again, if you're interested in just having a full session dedicated to walk you through the journey of the different tools and features across that cut horizontally across Power Platform and Microsoft solutions, because this is, we believe, is one of the biggest value that Microsoft is bringing, is like the one Microsoft ecosystem. It's not necessarily that you only operate within the context of Power Platform or Copilot Studio. It's actually more holistically around other products that could serve your governance policies, products like Purview, Sentinel, and other products. So all of those bring value into your ecosystem and also the set of tools that you have out of the box available for you.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to assume that this is something that everyone's familiar with, but for folks who are new to this, I'm going to go ahead and quickly touch upon it. Hey, Nazem, I see your message. Absolutely happy to do that. So within Copilot Studio in the Power Platform world, an environment is essentially something which is like a logical boundary within which you have apps, automate data, and users, etc. Right? It's like a logical and a security boundary. Right now, what you can do is you can provision multiple environments in your tenant, and then you can group these environments together in what is called as environment groups. Once you have once you create an environment group, you can enforce policies on top of that environment group and say, hey, I want these settings to be applied on every environment inside my group. So what that helps you do is you can group your environments within your tenant and then apply policies that apply to that specific group without having to go and change the policy in every single environment. So think about this as a way of scaling your configuration setting across a tenant. Now, connectors is a specific concept that is relevant to the rest of this discussion. So connectors is a way in which Copilot Studio apps automate agent flows can connect to external systems, right? This is the concept within Power Platform and is leveraged extensively when people build solutions. Advanced connector policy is, again, a specific type of a rule applied on top of an environment group, which allows you to dictate when a user is in a specific environment, what connectors can be used. So, for example, can you connect to Facebook? No, you don't want to connect to Facebook. Can you connect to SharePoint? Yes. So you can set those rules using advanced connector policies. Data policies is very similar to that. Let's just call it advanced connector policy version 1. Advanced connector policy is a new version, but the reason why data policies are important is because specifically for Copilot Studio, a lot of those settings are present in data policies. We used to call them as DLP back then. Now it's called data policies. And finally, Power Platform Pipelines is basically the in-product ALM CI/CD within the product. So this allows you to move solutions from your developers' environments into QA, production testing in a seamless fashion. You can achieve this using your own ALM tools, but we do have in-product ALM, so your makers don't have to leave the system or learn a different scripting language to make sure that solutions move from one environment to the other. Okay, with that brief primer on these basic concepts, I'm going to jump into the next slide. So based on all the requirements that and all the conversation that Hazem has had around as a role of a chief, Copilot Studio officer, we boiled down the requirements into 3. Contoso wants to make sure that they want to innovate by allowing people or their employees to build agents in a safe, secure manner without a lot of restriction. So in your organization, when you go back and look at how, the barriers to innovation, requesting an environment, requesting access to a certain type of a resource in Azure or AWS, etc. Right, the barriers that you have to it. What Contoso wants to do is they want to quickly onboard people. Quickly, they want to ensure that people can get access and start building quickly. However, they also want to make sure that when developers start innovating and building things, you don't want the developers to go and just click share and make it available to everyone across the organization. So that's definitely a situation that you want to monitor. And finally, to ensure that good out of all this innovation, the really valuable solutions which are built, we want to make sure that they can seamlessly be moved from one environment to another. So these are the 3 primary goals that we have created. And we are going to go into the personas, like we're going to create a fictitious team here who's going to implement this, right? So I want to introduce you to 3 people at Contoso. So you have Adele, who is the administrator, Copilot Studio and Power Platform administrator, right? There is Megan, who is developer extraordinaire. She just wants to build solutions which actually add value to her business and move on to the next cool thing. And currently, the cool thing is Copilot Studio. And then we have Nestor, who's our enterprise architect and a security guru, who will not let anything pass him in terms of, he is going to be your reviewer and the person who essentially blesses your solution so that you can take it into your production instance, right? So these are the 3 personas that we have talked about. And then let's look at the process that Adele has created to basically make the Hazem's vision over here a reality. So the first thing that we want to do is then we are going to speak specifically to the product right now. What we want to do is we want to quickly get get developers building. Like, remember the number of times you just waited for something to get provisioned so you can get started. Instead, here, the way we are going to create a process is a developer would request for access to Copilot Studio. And what we are going to do is, just by the virtue of membership to security groups, the platform will automatically provision an environment in the right environment group with the right policies as soon as the developer accesses Copilot Studio. And what this will achieve as outcomes is that you will basically have, sandbox dev environments, routing it to a properly secured environment. You will ensure that because you're applying policies on top of that environment groups, you are preventing data exfiltration. And you will also ensure that because of the sharing policies and things like that you implement, you will ensure that your assets that the developers are building are secure. Right. So now we've kind of got to the point where you've got developers building quickly and not waiting for multiple levels of approvals and things like that. However, once a developer builds, what's the first thing they do? They build something really, really cool. The first thing they want to do is they want to share it and gather feedback. We don't want that happening too much, because that's going to result in a lot of, IT that doesn't get noticed, and, results in shadow IT and things like that. So what we want to do is we want to build a pipeline for them, which is gated, so that you can have reviews. You can promote solutions from one stage to another through a gated approval system. And with that, we get the gated approval process, deployment process. Now it becomes secure and compliant, because now Nesta gets to validate all the solutions that go into production. Idel gets to validate that everything is kosher before a solution goes into production. And the best part of it all of this is audited, right? So these are the two processes that Idel is going to set up within Contoso. So let's look at what that configuration looks like, right? So at the tenant level, you have some settings that you will have to enforce, and we'll walk through that. It'll then goes ahead and creates 3 specific environment groups. Within each environment groups, you can have multiple environments. And what she does here is she actually sets up a bunch of rules and policies. And as developers start logging into Copilot Studio, their environments get provisioned under the right environment group based on the membership of their security group, right? And as you can see, once those developers start building things, it will start creating a QA environment, which has its own sets of rules and policies. And then they would contain environments which could have, where you can build a shared environment where you can host multiple, simple agents, or you could have dedicated environments which focuses on large enterprise use cases like customer service or hosting an Ask HR agent, things like that. Right? Again, it has its own rules and policies, because you don't need a production level rules and policies in a QA environment. You want it to be a little bit more restricted. And finally, in the production environment, it's the same story. We have these environments which are gated. And to make sure that the solutions go from developer environments to production, Idel can configure pipelines. And with this setup, she will basically go ahead and accomplish the goals that hasn't been set up. And this is essentially, I've created a scenario for them to go ahead and build out. I see there's some questions on the chat. Dedicated agent. The question that you asked, Benedict, is definitely possible. And in fact, we have a demo for the gated deployment, so we can walk through that process. All right. But yeah, you don't want to gate it too much. Kind of responding to Chris's responses, that we don't want to slow things down, but we want it to. We also don't want it to be like the Wild West either. Okay. All right. So congratulations, everyone. You've essentially sat through 36 slides that Azim and I presented. So hopefully, next steps we'll get into a demo. And I was tinkering around with the demo earlier on today. So let's just hope all of this works. All right, so let me quickly start with the configuration settings. All right, So some of these configuration settings are the same ones that Ken walked through in the previous session. So I'm going to go through this a little faster. So for folks who probably are not connecting with this, if you do go back to the Ken's session, you'll be able to actually review that. So I'm in Platform Admin Center right now. And in the Admin Center, I have a lot of settings at the tenant level that I can apply, right? So some of the settings that would be helpful in governing Copilot Studio within your organization is you could go in and ensure that you can restrict who can build agents within your organization using a security group. Today, this can also be enforced by rolling out licenses to specific users. The Copilot Studio Maker user license, which is a $0 SKU, but you can also restrict it using security groups. The other thing that we can also do is you want to review all these settings, which talks about sending feedback to Microsoft, enabling Copilot and Power Apps, etc. Right? The key feature, though, when you walk through when you're enabling your organization for Copilot Studio, is to ensure that you enable the ability to publish Copilot with AI features. Right. The next key tenant setting, tenant level feature that we have to consider, and apologize for bringing back the slides, is, give me one second, bring that up. Multi-rule environment routing. Now, this is a feature that is coming up, which will allow you to create a set of rules on how you land your environment, your developer environments within a specific environment group. So as you can see here in the screenshot here, you can see that we've created multiple rules here. And for each rule, there is a security group associated with it and an environment group associated with it. So if a user is a member of a specific security group, they will be routed to that. Their environment will be automatically created in that specific environment. Now you have this. You have the ability to add prioritization to this. So now what will happen is Hazem, who's part of the IT team, will get an environment inside the dev environment ring, right? Whereas Ashley, who's in finance, will actually get routed to the finance environment group. And if let's assume that I'm in two security groups, I'm in finance and in IT, the first rule that matches is where my environment would get created. So using this, you can create a well-defined routing mechanism so that your different developers can be categorized into specific environment groups within your organization. This is a new feature. It should be available to you pretty soon. I'm not commenting on the dates, but Ken Aguilar, if you guys know him, has posted about this. All right, back to the demo. So now that we have the tenant level settings done, let's take a look at the groups. So we've created 3 groups. We have dev, QA, and prod. Let's pick up one of these environment groups and look at some of the settings that we have created. So if you look at the rules inside the dev org, I'm going to sort it by published. So you can see that I've published a bunch of these policies. I have set up advanced connector policies. So essentially I've allowed and disallowed certain connectors within this group. This is a very interesting setting. So I have configured a pipeline. I have a pipeline host set up in my tenant, and I have selected a specific pipeline for this particular group, and this is called as a CO default, and we'll see this in action pretty soon. And then there is a bunch of other settings, but from a security perspective, I'd like you to pay attention to sharing controls. So what you want to do is you want to limit your sharing controls in your dev environment to 1 or maybe 2. Do not allow developers to share widely their applications from their developer environments, right? You do this for apps, you did this for Automate, you also do this for your Copilot Studio agents, right? So what I'm doing here is I'm blocking the editor permissions on Copilot Studio. I'm blocking viewer permissions on Copilot Studio. What this allows me to do is block anyone from sharing the agents that they built There is no way for a developer to build anything in a dev environment and make it accessible to anyone once you set this and configure this. And you also want to enable your generative AI settings and all the other things. But these are your key settings when it comes to governance and security. So like that, we have 3 of these groups and we have slightly different settings. Let's just take a quick look at what we've done in fraud. I don't know if I've done it. No. So let's do QA. Okay, so in QA, that's the environment where you go ahead and test your agents, right? You might have multiple testers, so you can relax your sharing and sharing permissions. But what you do is you don't let your developers into this environment. You ensure that your admins are responsible for sharing agents that with testers who need to test this application, etc. Right? The last thing that I wanted to bring up quickly is unmanaged customizations. Unmanaged customizations, what it allows you to do is you can block all unmanaged changes to a specific environments. And what this means is the only way you can put changes into that environment is through importing a managed solution. This ensures that what your testers are testing and your end users are using is a very specific version, which is not tampered by, let's say, an administrator. So that would be another setting that I would advise you to look at. So now that we've covered this part, let's quickly look at what all of this means in action for a developer at Contoso, right? So, okay. So I have Alan here logged in. He's a developer at Contoso. Let's studio Microsoft.com. So when I open this up, and I'm hoping this doesn't take too long, what is happening right now is Alan is being added, pre-approved into a specific security group. And as you can see, it detected that and it says, okay, we're going to connect you to your developer environment. And what is happening right now is a new developer environment is being provisioned within a security group that is configured for Alan's, which is aligned with Alan's security group, right? And once this is done, let's just take a quick look at the environment name. And as soon as Alan lands here, we can see that there is a welcome maker content, which gives you all the information that Alan needs to actually build and deploy agents safely and securely, right? And if I switch back to the administrator's view here, you can see that within CO Dev, you would have Alan Young's environment now added to the dev environment group, which means all the policies that I applied here is now automatically applied to Alan's environment as well. The next thing that I want to bring up here is the pipelines. So if you look at the pipelines that was configured, so Adel had gone ahead and configured a pipeline for the COO team. Now they're all part of the COO team. So within pipelines, you can now see that Alan's environment was automatically added. You see 2 entries here because there was an existing entry I was testing with earlier on, but this is the new one it got added, and it was automatically added into the configure pipeline. We didn't have to do a single thing. As long as we configured that setting, it just kicked in. So now if Alan decides to go and log into the system and make updates and deploy solutions, this pipeline will be available for him to try and deploy the solutions over, right? So by pre-configuring all of this, what Adel has done is she's created a process through which all the developers can start building very quickly. Now let's switch personas again to Megan, our star developer at Contoso. What a day in our life looks like, right? So she's been busy at work. She's basically built an agent called a Copilot Studio Teacher. Very simple instructions, and the agent now is helping her learn more advanced concepts in Copilot Studio. She wants to share this with her teammates. So like I said, she's inside her dev environment, right? So you can see that the only thing that she has access to is the default and the dev environment that she has access to. If she goes to try and share this environment at this point, share this agent, you can see that the restriction kicks in and does not allow her to share. So there's no way that she can share this today without Idel and Nestor knowing about it, right? Now, let's see if you can publish this on Facebook, right? And nope, this channel is not allowed because the DLP policy is configured to restrict it. And similarly, if you go into settings, our settings also, what our settings also do is they go ahead and block the ability to create an agent without authentication. So where users without authentication can interact with the agent. So all of these security settings have enforced, has essentially ensured that Megan's building agents in a very secure environment, but she's not allowed to basically make it available without due process. So how does she go ahead and do that, right? So switching over to the solutions, a solution for folks who are new to this, a solution is a way in which you can package Copilot Studio, all the artifacts you build, move it from your developer environment to QA to production, right? So let's go into a Copilot Studio solution, right? And on the left side, you see pipelines. And when you click on pipelines, the default pipeline that Intel created to execute this process now appears, becomes available. And what can happen here is Megan can go ahead and request an approval to deploy, right? You land on your deployment screen, you can select pipelines which has been made available to you, etc. Right? And then you can schedule it if you want. We're going to go and kick off the deployment right now. Hopefully this process won't take longer and we can get on to the next stages. But famous last words. Huh? Okay, great. So you land on the screen where the solution, it gives you the details of the solution. And interesting, it actually generated automatically the description of the solution as well, right? And now Megan just hits deploy, right? This doesn't mean she has access to the QA environment. If you look at the environment list, she doesn't have access to the QA environment. So we are basically doing this deployment on behalf of the pipeline owner. In this case, what happens right now is we have created, the pipelines have been configured to create a custom approval process flow. So I'm going to switch over to Idel's themes, and we're going to wait for an approval request to come through here. This might take a little bit. Yeah, this might take a little bit. So if there's questions on chat, I can take them right now while we wait for the screen to refresh.
Doesn't the approval request normally comes before it starts deploying?
It's the stage that I have configured. Right now, it is only exporting the artifact.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
So
the screen is
so
too
it
small.
doesn't deploy
Okay.
until it'll basically goes in. So
Yeah,
I've
got
set up
the
a flow in that stage. Yeah.
Understood. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So now it's updated, which says that, hey, your request is to deploy is pending, right? And the reason it is pending is because I've gated it using flows, and there is a very simple walkthrough of that in our MS Learn documentation. And what will happen now is I'm just waiting for a ping on my site so that I can surface this for you. Let's see if something came up. I'm expecting a ping. Let's see if that actually shows up. I'm going to go ahead and take over the share quickly. I want to walk you through what it looks like, guys. I think this is our second demo issue we've had, right? So what will happen here? I'm basically going to walk you through like a video of I recorded earlier so that I can I can show you what the experience is going to be. I'll talk through these slides. So once we do this request, right, like once the request is initiated, what you would essentially see is on the left side, you have Adele, and she gets a approval notification, and which says, hey, can you approve this deployment? And I've basically put some spoofing on the content, but you can see that the name of the solution actually reflects the solution that was requested to be moved to QA, right? Once you click on approve, what happens is that our security reviewer, Mr. Nestor, actually gets this approval as well. And then Nestor reviews these things. He looks at a bunch of documents that was associated with the deployment, and then he approves. And once both of them approve, then the deployment process starts. Right. So this entire thing was recorded, but I recorded for this very purpose. I was sure I was going to run out of time. And plus Hazem insisted. So we have that end-to-end process right now, which actually ensures that a developer can request deployments, but it only gets into QA and production post a detailed review, right? The last thing I want to show before I kind of release the control over to Ashley is all these deployments that was done, that got executed, is automatically persisted as history within your pipelines. So you can see I've been hard at work different times during the day trying to build this demo. And this is the list of all of the deployments that succeeded, failed, canceled, etc. And you can see a trace of all those deployments, who requested it. You can even, get the details of this deployment. You have detailed notes here. I think you can also get, solutions associated with this and download that solution and things like that, because it's all persisted. You can see the solution artifacts, which is persisted as a part of those deployments. So you have a very good CI/CD process here that you can apply and help your employees build in a safe, secure manner at Contoso. Again, it's a small take on what Hazem was talking about, how that translates into practice. All right, Ashley, I'm going to hand it over to you. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending and making time today. We really appreciate your taking your time and joining us.